So now we're currently in this trading range from this high to this low. We can anticipate price to likely return to equilibrium, and the reason for that is because once a range is created, price always returns to equilibrium. Next week I'd like to see an up close candle, to be honest. I'd like to see price trade up higher into this range before moving lower. What's going on, guys? It's GBP baby. Welcome back to another video. It's currently 9:16 p.m. on Sunday the 7th of Jan, and yeah, let's get straight into things. So you can see that we traded up nicely into this weekly bearish order block. I'm going to make this grey and type in bearish, weekly bearish order block, and you can see we've had a reaction off it already, so that's nice to see. If you recall, my bias for the month is a down close candle, meaning that I wanted to see the high of the month get made in the first 2 weeks, and it looks like that high may have already been made. If that's the case, then we can start to anticipate down close candles for the rest of the month. But regardless, I'd like to see a nice reaction away moving into the new week. So I'm going to start marking out PD arrays on the weekly, which we should consider. To be honest, the only two main PD arrays I have my eye set on is this bullish order block. Since we closed above it, this is now a bullish order block, so we can draw that out. We have a weekly bullish order block here, and then we have a rejection block here, a weekly rejection block. Now, if you don't know what a rejection block is, ICT does have a video explaining exactly what it is. However, I will give a brief explanation of what it is. So a rejection block, the rejection block range is basically this whole candle. So this wick. This wick, I view it as a block in itself, and you can see how the wick of this candle traded slightly into it, and then we had a massive reaction away from it. So that means that when price comes back into this range, we can anticipate another reaction within this block, and that's what makes it a rejection block. So that's pretty much all it is. Obviously ICT explains it better, and I'm happy to comment that video if you need be. But yeah, I have my eyes set on this weekly bullish order block as a target for us to trade down into and potentially reach into that weekly rejection block. So that's for the weekly. You'll also see that we've traded away from this fair value gap. We traded into it and wicked out away from it and closed below it. The fact that we're closing below it again is showing bearish nature, and technically it's respecting it to an extent. So there's that to consider. So yeah, that's pretty much the weekly. Let's drop down to the daily. And you'll see again we have that volume imbalance here that has acted bearishly. We traded through it up to that weekly bearish order block, traded away from it, which was nice to see. We ran the stops, which I called out last week, this buy side liquidity up here, and we ran them twice. The fact that we ran them twice, again, this is typical price action. We stab it once, pull back, stab it one more time, and then I'd like to see a continuation to the downside with the swing low acting as a breaker. And what I mean by that is on the 4 hour, we have a high, a low, a high, a high, meaning that I'm looking for these levels, this range from this high to this low, to act as a breaker block for the downside. But let's stay on the daily for now and start looking for daily PD arrays. So there is this there is this volume imbalance down here as well on the daily. This is going to act as a magnet to price so long as we're bearish. So I'm going to draw this out. I'm going to make this blue, and I'm going to type in volume imbalance. And you'll see that lines up nicely with that weekly rejection block. So that's nice to see. And then we also have a daily bullish order block here. Yes, the weekly bullish order block is still prominent. However, the daily is what we should also be focusing on as well. So I'm going to make the daily a little bit more thicker, and I'm going to put bullish order block, and then we'll see how price reacts once it reaches these levels. Now, don't get me wrong, price can react aggressively at the weekly bullish order block, and it very may well. However, if we say trade right through it, then it'll be the daily bullish order block I have my eyes on to expect some kind of retracement or reaction away from it. But overall, I would like to see if we can reach this volume imbalance. Now, we do have a lot of news this week. We have CPI, and we have consumer sentiment, and all sorts happening on the Thursday and Friday. So we can anticipate a lot of volatility towards the end of the week, and hopefully see the high of the week get made within the Monday or Tuesday. Let's drop down to the 4 hour now, And you'll see again we have non-farm payroll trading up into that weekly bearish order block before aggressively trading lower and closing below this swing low. It's the close below this swing low which is significant to me and shows bearishness. And then again we have that daily bullish order block for us to hopefully start to trade our way into, and that weekly rejection block. You'll also see this wick here. This happened in like on a 5-minute chart, I think it was. Yeah, weird price action, but one thing to take note of is we now have relative equal lows because of this. So we have this swing low, we have this low, and we have this low. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we should be able to. But now we have relative equal lows residing below here. So what's gonna rest below relative equal holes? What's going to rest below relative equal lows is going to be sell side liquidity. So that's another reason I'd like to see price start to draw down to the downside. Let's go to the 1 hour, see what we can find. Actually, let's stay on the 4 hour first. Obviously we have this fair value gap that was created. I would like to think that this can act bearishly, so I do anticipate price to trade into it. However, I would like to see it reject price. So I do have my eyes set on this fair value gap, and if we drop down to the 1 hour, we can see that fair value gap again appearing here. So it's likely price may want to trade into it, potentially fill it before then moving lower. So I'd be keeping my eyes on this area in general to create the potential high of the week, which is quite shallow to be honest. But let's drop down to a 15-minute, and you'll see that we have a nice little swing high here, which is going to have liquidity residing above it for us to grab and then distribute on the downside. So that's to all take into consideration. I'm not going to mark out anything else on this time frame purely because the daily levels and 4 hour levels are the only ones I'm really concerned about, to be honest, especially on the dollar. So I'm not really too concerned. But in terms of delivery, beautiful delivery. Again, these relative equal highs got taken nicely, 1, 2, and then we have this volume imbalance that we are continuing to close below. So let me show you. You can see our price is closing below it, so it's showing a willingness to want to go lower. But yeah, we'll see how Monday trades, and yeah, I am anticipating this swing high here. I'm just going to leave it thin. There's going to be buy side liquidity residing above that. I'd like to think a turtle soup could trade up above, again accumulate and then distribute to the downside. So that's nice to see. Let's now go to, actually one more thing, very slight. We have a high, a low, a higher high, and then we break lower. Now yes, we wick through, but in terms of volume, this would be the breaker: high, low, higher, high, and then we move lower. So that means this candle here, the last down close, would act as the breaker block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that right through. I'm going to make it red, and I want to see how price treats it when it gets to that level. I'd expect it to turn around at this point. Obviously we'll see, but at least we know that this in general should be the breaker we're looking at with regards to volume. So I'm going to keep that on my chart, and it's above the buy side liquidity that I said will be sitting above this high. So yeah, that's cool for Dixie. Now let's head over to GBP. I'm going to start with the weekly. We'll start with the weekly. And you see that what we will see is that GBP has taken out 2 weeks worth of lows. We've taken out last week lows and the week before that's low. So that means all these lows have been taken. We need to now offset those positions above relative equal highs. Where do we see relative equal highs? Well, we have relative equal highs that have formed above here and here. So these two highs I do have my eyes set on. Price doesn't need to reach up to it in this week coming. Like, it doesn't have to get up there. However, there is definitely relative equal highs here, which means that buy side liquidity should be sitting nicely above that. So we can move that to the right, and we can leave that on our charts. Now let's drop down to the daily, and you'll see that we have a nice inversion fair value gap that's now formed after last week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out this, because this is going to be a significant area where price should find support in the new week. So we have daily inversion fair value gap high, and we have daily inversion fair value gap low. And then I'm also going to mark out the midpoint because I would like to see price respect that midpoint. As in, yes, we can trade below it, but preferably we don't. And if we do trade below it, I want volume to stay above it. So that's how I'm treating this midpoint. And it's going to be interesting to see how price trades through it. I'll probably, once we do start getting to those levels, we could even split it into quarters. And then we can start looking at how price steps down and uses those levels in order to springboard. Because what I'm anticipating is price will come back down into the daily inversion fair value gap, accumulate positions, and then use it as a springboard to start running into either the weekly relative equal highs, or we also have these relative equal highs now on the daily as well. So let's get those marked out for buy side liquidity. There we go. Now let's go down to the 4 hour and look at how price delivered. You can see we wicks down, took out some stops, and then with non-farm payroll we traded right up through that inversion fair value gap, closing above it. We closed above it. Honestly guys, the way that price closes is so important in terms of looking at where it closes. It has a significant impact onto whether I'll, class it as an relevant level or not. Closes above it, and then we closed on a down candle like this, created a nice fair value gap from this high to this low. And if we look at the midpoint of that, you'll see that that just happens to line up nicely with that daily fair value gap midpoint. So that's something to consider. We also have a fair value gap up here on the 4 hour resting above the buy side liquidity. That's another reason price, once it trades up there, at least we have a nice target on the 4 hour for us to trade into, because there's an imbalance up there. And then in terms of low of the week, like I said, I'd like to see the low get created in here for us to springboard higher. I do have my eye set on this green candle, and you'll see why on the lower time frame. Let me see if I can figure out what time frame, because it's quite consolidated in general. Let's see, 15-minute. In terms of a breaker, it's not very clear. We have this low, high, lower, low, and then we break higher. But more importantly, or more relevantly, so to speak, or relatively, we have a bullish order block here, and look at that. The bullish order block sits perfectly on the midpoint of the inversion fair value gap. So I'm expecting a nice reaction off of this level. Furthermore, we have a fair value gap here below it. Price can trade into it. However, I would like to see price leave it open. If price fails to reach this, then I'd see this as a breakaway gap. So I'm going to put this as anticipated breakaway gap. And like I said, price can reach down into it. However, I'd like to think that this order block will send price higher, and this will simply remain open. And then obviously we have that beautiful buy side liquidity residing up here, and that 4 hour fair value gap I was talking about, with potential for weekly relative equal highs as well. However, that's only if price gets overzealous in the new week. So that's everything on GBPUSD. Let's finish off on Euro. We'll start with the weekly again. It's very similar. I am going to draw our attention first to the fact that we've traded into a weekly bullish order block, which acts as a propulsion block. So we traded down into this order block, and then look at the reaction away from that. So now we should be looking for, PD arrays above the market that price may want to reach for. First, we have this weekly bearish order block, a bit like on the dollar. So let's draw that out. We also have this rejection block, same thing as dollar, just inverted. Look how price rejects away from the block. And then we have these relative equal highs up here. However, I'm not going to worry about those highs for now. We can think about that in the future. But let's look down at the daily now. So you'll see how the dailies run out stops below this low and these lows. I am, like I said, obviously anticipating a push higher towards the weekly rejection block and bearish order block. But we also have this nice daily bearish order block as well. So I'm going to mark this one out in red and put daily bearish order block. We have this imbalance as well from this low to this high. This has all been delivered on the downside. So what's price going to want to do? It's going to want to trade back through it on the upside and close that in. So that's another reason I want to see price push higher on euro. We could drop down to the 4 hour, and on the 4 hour, this bullish order block here is what I have my eyes set on, in terms of, you know, in terms of PD arrays below the market that we could trade to. And the reason for that is because although we've wicked lower on these wicks, this is the lowest down close candle that's then caused, you know, an up move that's closed higher. So I'm anticipating price to want to return back to this level for us to springboard higher. Yes, we have this bullish order block as well, because technically it is. However, when we look at the midpoint, you'll find that that midpoint lines up again with the opening of this bullish order block. So this is the one I have my eye set on. And then when we drop down to a lower time frame, we'll be able to see more. So let me just type in 4 hour bullish order block. We'll keep that blue. And then on the 1 hour, let's see what we can find. Again, not much. 15 minute. We have a breaker here, kind of low, high, lower, low. Yes, the wicks are lower, but volume, I'm looking at volume. Low, high, lower, low, then we break higher. You'll see the last up close candle lines up perfectly with that 4 hour bullish order block I just pointed us out to. So there's reason for price to want to draw down into this level. So pretty much all next week, I'm just going to have my eyes set on this level. I want to see, okay, do we get a reaction away from it? If we do, is there a setup? What time are we reaching it? Etc. Obviously, we'll wait for Monday to trade. If Monday doesn't trade to this level, then Tuesday will. Let's see. Let's quickly go back to the 5 minute. And I want to show you guys something that I've learned recently. Now, this last up close candle, this swing high, as soon as this candle closed above this swing high here, this is when the shift in market happened. So once that closed, the market is now hunting for buy stops and buy side liquidity. So it's this candle which I had my eye set on that I'm anticipating a reaction away from. So that's something to take note of. I know I explained that very briefly, but ICT mentioned this whole market shift and sentiment and understanding, you know, a shift in market structure or break in market structure. Understanding that, he explains it in his recent charted content. But basically, I'm going to have my eyes on this, and I will be talking about it in this week's videos. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So that's everything. You know my bias. You know where I'm expecting the low to be made or where I want to see a reaction made. One last thing to take note of is I am also looking at Thursday's high. Now, it's hard for me to explain why I'm looking at Thursday's high, but I'm seeing it as a target still, and I'll explain on the lower time frame. So let me just write Thursday high. And I'm seeing this swing high. Yeah, like, yes, we have this swing high to trade to in terms of, you know, to release positions above. However, it's this swing high I'm still referring to because, again, volume hasn't yet closed above there. So on the 4 hour, I want to see volume close above this Thursday high. And it lines up nicely with this high, so there's relative equal highs, as you can see. So I'm waiting and looking to see, can volume close above Thursday's high? If it's a yes, then we can start to push up and look for these PD arrays to get traded to. Furthermore, look at the midpoint of this. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Midpoint of the wick, Thursday's high. I want to see price trade through it. So that's going to be everything. I hope you found this insightful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.